We're going to be talking about Silicon Valley real estate market and then the Greater Bay Area. I'm Richard Calhoun with Creekside Realty, working with buyers and sellers here in Silicon Valley for the past 40 years. If you're a repeat viewer, you may want to skip the rest of this introduction. What we're looking at is the most comprehensive, unique data set focused on Silicon Valley. We're looking at 5-week data instead of monthly data. We're looking at offers accepted versus pending sales. We're looking at active listings that don't have any underlying contract. We're looking at seller price reductions. We're looking at buyer overbids. We're looking at micro-market heat maps. We're looking at countywide data. We're looking at regional data, including all of Northern California. We're looking at estimated monthly payments. We're looking at the 10 and 90 percentile sale price instead of just the median sale price. We're looking at days of unsold inventory, the speed of the marketplace. We're looking at how long it takes the long typical seller to sell their property. These are the URLs. The green is what I call my root URL. That gets you the YouTube archive as well as the YouTube link. If you add in the green URL in 2024, you get to Saturday presentation live at 9 o'clock and you can ask questions. If you want to look at the PowerPoint handout, you type in the green URL and then H for handout 2023-12/30, the date, year, month, date code. And then if you want a specific episode, it's right here. Again, I'm Richard Calhoun with Creekside Realty, working with buyers and sellers here in Silicon Valley. Let's get into the data. This is the first heat map. What it's showing is the active inventory compared to the 10-year median. Red in color means that there is less inventory than there typically is, which would favor the seller. Alameda County, I only have countywide data for the first 3 slides. The other Santa Clara County and San Mateo County has the micro-market data, which is 20 micro-market areas normally. There are 7, I believe, in Alameda County. That's showing as 1 for the first 3 slides. Now what we're doing is the same thing, but on the offer side. So again, there's a lot less offers than there typically are, but fewer number of offers favors the buyer, which is why the blue in color. And in San Mateo and Santa Clara County, you can see the different shades. Your areas like Cupertino and Sunnyvale and Redwood City are sort of in a balanced marketplace, having basically 100% of the number of offers that you'd expect. Everybody else is lagging behind in the number of offers by quite a bit. Then we're looking at the DUI, days of unsold inventory. That's the ratio between the supply and the number of sales, the demand, supply-demand curve. Here, what you're doing is you're looking at the DUI compared to the 10-year median again. Blue in color means it's favoring the buyers, so that's a higher, a slower marketplace. Pink in color, like Alameda County at 83%, is favoring the seller because it's a little bit faster. It's only 83% of the speed of the marketplace you'd expect it to be. DUI is one of those numbers where the lower the number is, the faster the marketplace is. It's time on the market, essentially, a theoretical time on the market. Now we're dropping, comparing to the 10-year median. And the purpose of the 10-year median is to give you some historical perspective on where the current marketplace is compared to the recent past. Now we're just looking at the raw counts. And basically here, I consider anything under about 6 weeks to be a hot seller's marketplace, anything above about 11 weeks to be a cool buyer's marketplace. And again, buyers get blue in color, sellers get red in color. The only areas that have blue are in San Mateo County, the expensive areas, and the coast. And when you look at that, the coast is at almost 250 days of unsold inventory, which is almost about the highest that you get to see. But the coast is a fairly small area like Foster City. And that is one of the problems of trying to keep similar properties together is they get so small, they have a lot of statistical bounce. But you also get bounce if you put unrelated areas together, because if you get 2 areas that are not similar grouped together, area A does better one week and then area B does better the next week, and your data flies all over the place. So it's more important to have similar properties together while trying to keep the data size up. You can see most of Santa Clara County is around 3 weeks, the heart of Silicon Valley, but the outlying areas either being affordable in South County and in East San Jose, Central San Jose, is higher at 40 to 50 days, or the expensive areas is also higher at more like 60 days. It's the bread and butter part of Silicon Valley, your Santa Teresa, Blossom Valley, Milpitas, North Valley, Willow Glen, Campbell, Cambrian, Santa Clara, Cupertino, and Sunnyvale. That's the hot part of the marketplace sitting in there around 3 weeks. It's basically those that can afford and not the high end that's doing well. And basically that's what you see in Alameda County. Alameda County is more affordable and it's got the faster paced market. In San Mateo area, it's sort of the same thing. The expensive areas, Menlo Park, Atherton, is very slow at 120 days. The coast is, a different marketplace. You have to be willing to drive over 92 in rush hour traffic or up Highway 1. So it is, a completely different marketplace and really is not related to the rest of San Mateo County. Moving on to days on market. This is for the consumer that wants something that's not theoretical, it's easier to understand. This is basically the long typical seller. How long is it taking to sell their particular property? And basically anything under 3 weeks is a red hot seller's marketplace. Anything above 7 weeks is an ice cold buyer's marketplace. And you might say, why the difference between DUI and days on market? One of the big differences is days on sold inventory counts all inventory, including that inventory that doesn't sell, because it's active inventory and you don't know what will or won't sell. Days on the market isn't calculated until the offer is accepted. So you ignore all the overpriced properties that aren't going to sell. And so the number is lower. If I was looking at days on market for the active listings, that would be closer to DUI, but that number is rarely, in my opinion, irrelevant for the most part, other than to compare it to some degree to the DUI. Here is the seller's ask price adjustment. This is the average, so this is everybody in a blender. A very small percent of the sellers are doing price reductions. It's, typically somewhere around 10% of the sellers do price reductions. If 90% of the sellers aren't doing a price reduction, when you start having a price reduction of 3.5%, that's actually very significant, which is why I call this a tight metric. 1/4% price reduction is the beginning of a balanced market. From 1/4 to 3/4 is the balanced market. You hit 1% or even anything over 3/4%, and it starts favoring the buyer. I am going to make slight adjustments probably over the next week to this, because these discounts of 3.5% are bigger than I was anticipating. Now you're looking at the frequency. How common are the price reductions? And that's what I was saying is pretty tight. So here you can see in the San Mateo area, it's getting to be way above that 10% number. But in Santa Clara County, it's 10 to 20%. In Alameda County, it's 10 to 20%. In San Mateo County, it's basically hovering around 50%, except for Redwood City. So a lot more common price reductions because the market's just slow and people aren't selling like they expect. I'm a little surprised that Pleasanton is showing a 30% price reduction, but that's why you do statistics, is to figure out what's going on in the marketplace. This is the overbidding. So now we're flipping over and looking at what the buyer does when the buyer comes in with their offer. Typically, the reason you didn't go over asking price is there's multiple offers. And unfortunately, there's no easy metric to determine how many listings are gathering multiple offers. And unsatisfied multiple offers is really the key, because that gives you an unsatisfied buyer demand indicator. This is the percentage of the ask price that buyers are coming in over the asking price. And you can see that you go down to the bottom of the table, and Berkeley and Alameda County is getting 13% over their asking price. Back in Santa Clara County, the highest area is 6%. You'll notice all of Santa Clara County is over 1% above the asking price. San Mateo County is either 2% below or 3% above. It's sort of a split of whether you're in a demand area or not. This is, again, is the average. If you look at the distribution, that's a whole nother thing, and we'll be looking at that a little bit later, which is also interesting. This is the frequency of overbidding. So how common is overbidding? Santa Clara County, you can see a lot of the areas are between 50 and 2/3 of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. Again, the more affordable areas, it's under 50%. You go up into San Mateo County, and it's basically 1/3 to 50%. And in Alameda County, it's much more like Santa Clara County, with 50 to 75% of the sellers getting more than their asking price. This is the appreciation as measured from the last 9 months, last 3/4 of 2015. In Santa Clara County, you have a low of 16% appreciation, which should be blue in color. These colors are goofed up for some reason. Well, actually, the numbers are right. It's the color code. The more processing I do, there's more steps, more likely for to make mistakes. So basically, the colors are brought in here by hand. The whole thing is goofed up, and we're going to just skip the slide. The numbers were accurate, though, for anyone that wants to go back and look. Here's the prices, and instead of just following the median number, which is the middle number, I follow the 10 and 90 percentile. So you're sandwiched. 80% of the homes are between the two numbers, and the median number is the middle. Here, color is assigned by price, not by heat of the marketplace. The more expensive the area is, the redder the color. The more affordable the area is, the bluer the color. And here is a summary. This is a summary of the heat maps that we have been going over of all the different areas. So you can start over on the left-hand side and pick the micro market area you're interested in and see what the conditions are. Like if you look at Los Altos, it's blue in inventory, blue in offers, blue in DUI, neutral on days of unsold inventory, neutral on days on marketplace, neutral on price adjustments, hot in the low number of sellers that are doing price reductions, neutral in the amount buyers are overbidding, neutral in the frequency of overbidding, neutral in the appreciation, although it's 16%, that should be a solid blue, and then a pretty solid pink on price because it's one of the more expensive areas. Or you can start over here in your dollar price range. These are obviously in thousands. When you have 3,135, that's 3,135,000. Or on the far right column is an estimated payment using the Federal Reserve interest rate and assuming an 80% loan and reasonable estimates of property tax and insurance. Here now we're looking at, instead of the micro markets, we're looking at Silicon Valley in a blender. We're looking at all three counties, Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, and Alameda County in a blender. We start off with inventory in the purple, and you can see that inventory is somewhere around 75% of the inventory you'd expect. I have moved the y-axis, the vertical axis, over to the right-hand side because my recent data is there, so you no longer have to scroll all the way across the map. And I also dropped the numbers because of lack of time, but I think that's actually a benefit, the little time I've spent looking at this, because it makes you look at the lines more than the actual numbers. With the numbers over here, I'm thinking of not calling out what the actual value is anymore. Moving on from inventory to offers, you can see offers is slightly higher than 75%, approaching 80%, giving you a DUI that's lower. Now, it's not going to be a direct one-to-one comparison. I can't take this 79% over 75 and calculate what the DUI is because all three items are done independently of each other. Your typical year that you're comparing everything is versus 10-year median is determined by that metric. So the inventory, the offers, and the DUI could all be determined in different years, the 10-year median, and therefore the ratio doesn't work. This table is of value, and I actually saw one of my first articles talking about how the lack of inventory we're having least amount of, I think they were talking about in the state of California in the last 36 years. I only have 25 years of data going towards 26 years, so I don't have it, and I don't have statewide data. I focused on Silicon Valley, and then I branch out and do the Greater Bay Area. But you come over here, and you can see that we only had 1,001 transactions in the last 5 weeks. In the last 10 years, the previous record was 1152. And I don't know the record because it's the lowest in the last 25 years, and it's now the lowest in the last 10 years. So the 101 should have been a dark blue. I didn't get that shaded. Now we're looking at the estimated payments for Silicon Valley. And here I broke them out into the cheapest homes. So if you're buying the least expensive homes, you're down here somewhere around $6,000. And I'll point out, these payments are getting pretty darn close to what they were in 2022. We're still above where they were in 2021. And this graph only goes back to 2017. I threw it together quickly, getting ready for a presentation, and then I never went back and did it. I will go back and reverse engineer this all the way back to 2014 so that my data presentation is more consistent. The gray line is the median, and then the red line is the 90% the most expensive. So you can see people are having payments of around 22,000. It turns out most people that are buying the most expensive homes are not doing an 80% loan. This graph is a little bit different, just minorly. I have an added in line. This is sort of a hot marketplace up here and a cold marketplace. And I think the line is sort of an accurate representation of how the line moves. And what we're doing is we're looking, each line is a 5-week distribution. Initially, we're starting off at months. So the next slide that you're going to see is 11 months ago. And since I do things on a weekly basis, that's going to be either 4 or 5 weeks to try to keep it on a monthly basis. And we're just going to step back and watch the trend. So the bold line, you can see it's going up. So that's last year. There's the peak of the market. Now you can see we hit a little bit of a plateau. You're coming down a little bit more, and then coming down some more. And now we're back into a plateau here, sort of at the bottom of the marketplace. A year ago, we were down here on the blue dotted line, and now we're up here on the purple green line and not really looking like we're going to get much further. If we do come further, we're not going to reach this. But since this is basically a year ago, I expect that, in a week or, a couple weeks, we're going to start seeing this trend go upward. Now we're flipping over and looking at the overbidding, and I also deleted some of the background shading on this. I was going to put in the line like I did on the other graph, but I didn't get there. But in general, up and to the right is an improving marketplace. It would be something, a steeper arrow showing the trend, but something like this. And again, we're starting off a year ago. Here is the worst week we ever had, which is going all the way back to just after the World Trade Center, right at Thanksgiving of 2021. People might be thinking, why is that right after World Trade Center? Well, we went into a shock with the 5-week period to close. That's when everything bottomed out. And then you got past Thanksgiving. People were saying, hey, let's get going again. It actually happened 5 weeks earlier than that. So this is the worst closings. This is the best closings, which was just actually approaching 2 years ago now. The end of March of 2022 was the best closings. So the peak of the market was 5 weeks earlier than that. So somewhere the peak of the market was somewhere in February of 2022. But here we're stepping through. You can see the line moves up, and now it's moving. It's sort of at a plateau, and now it's going to start moving down a little bit. See, it's moving down just ever so slightly week after week after week. More condensed. It's more condensed, I think, because of the lack of inventory, but you can see that you've come down. Clearly, you're not down as far as you were in 2020, a year ago, 2022, the end of the year, as you are now, but you're sort of in the middle of the marketplace, but it's actually probably a little bit of cooler marketplace than we typically have been in the last 10 years. Now what we're looking at is Silicon Valley, the 3 counties. We're going to look at the thin lines are the trend lines. So this is the most inventory you typically have. The gray line is the typical inventory you have. The red line is the least inventory you'll have. I also have done a change here. I'm going back to 2014, so you can see the bigger history, and you can see how the purple line sort of follows the trends of the 3 colored lines. And then there's obviously deviations, like starting in 2020, 2021, and then there's this huge run up in 2022, and then where we are now. And you can see that based on the inventory being limited, we're sort of at the least inventory you'd expect. But starting in 2023, I blew out the axis. To the left of here is it's much more condensed. The vertical lines that are dark are your year marks. The fainter ones are your quarters. I'm thinking about making the vertical quarters darker so they're easier to see, but broken so you can distinguish them between the year ends. From here is 2 years, and from here to here is only 1 year. So you have to adjust your eyes, but that way you can see the data. You have 1 full year of the current data, and then we'll be adding in next year's data as it comes out, so you can see small trends. And I think I'm going to do this going forward. Appreciate any feedback people want to share, but I think that way you can sort of see a greater time frame, and this becomes a bigger issue as I start displaying data from 2014 and I have more and more years worth of data. Now what we're doing is the same concept, and again, the spread out of the scale. We're looking at inventory compared to normal. You can see inventory was actually right up in the normal range. Then we got into a shortage of normal inventory, and then the inventory was starting to return, but we've had a shortage of inventory the last couple weeks now again. So that's just showing you trends. I've also, since the axis is over here, I'm not doing the call outs. I figure it's easier to do there, and I was concerned, and I was finding myself, I was focused more on what the absolute numbers were versus trends. And this is more about trends and what the market's doing. Here's looking at the same concept with the number of offers. You can see the number of offers is basically down here at the least number of offers that you would expect even at this time of the year. Here is compared to normal. Even though we were down at 70%, we've gone up, and we've had a significant shoot up just in the last week right here of almost, what is that, 7% increase in the number of offers. For whatever reason, buyers didn't go away as much this year as they did typical years. Now, the weather was better for the most part. Yeah, we did have a little bit of rain yesterday, but this is what the market was doing within the last 5 weeks. Here's days on sold inventory. So again, the same concept. And you can see that the purple line, the current data line, is pretty close to where the gray line is. It's off a little bit because it went down this past week when the normal is going up. But when you're looking at a 10-year normal, just where did Christmas fall? What day of the week did Christmas fall? And makes a big difference on where that line is going to be. And you can see that the purple line has been bouncing up and down more than, say, the gray line right behind it. So the 10-year median tends to be more stable than any 1 year's worth of data. But again, the big takeaway is you have basically the normal number of inventory that you'd expect. Here's DUI compared to the normal. So here you can see the huge difference. A week ago, we were typical. Now we're basically, a hot seller's marketplace, a faster DUI than normal. And that's because the number of offers didn't go away as much as it typically does. So you went from 100% of this typical to something like only 85%, a 15% improvement in 1 week. That's pretty significant. But you got to remember, we have low inventory, low number of offers of sales. So a couple extra offers, and you can have this kind of decrease in DUI. Here's the days on market 75th percentile. You can see that they're all climbing. This metric typically bottoms out sometime right during second quarter. It was a little bit later this year, but then it basically climbs right up. And you're between a hot marketplace down here in the red and a typical marketplace, and you're obviously nowhere close to what a slow marketplace would be up here in the blue. Here's compared to typical. So it's actually performing close to typical. Yes, it increased. It went from 70% to maybe 74%, but that's only a 4% increase. So it looks a whole lot less of a drastic change. It's, just presenting the different data in different ways, but it's all the same data. Here's the ask price reductions that the sellers are doing. Typical's up here at 99%. So that means in a typical marketplace, sellers are doing a 1% price reduction. Right now, they're doing about a 1.5% price reduction. And here's where a cool marketplace is. Now we flip over and look at that compared to a percent compared to normal. The blue lines are up there just sort of indicating where a cool marketplace might be. I'm not sure on the placement yet, but it lets you know that a purple line below the gray line is going into a cool marketplace because sellers are taking a bigger price reduction. And that's exactly what's happening here. If it was on the black line, the purple line would be up here. You're taking a bigger price reduction, so you're favoring the blue line a little bit, and that's where the purple line is. So you'd expect it to be on the blue side of the gray line, and that's exactly where you are. That's how these two maps interact. One's a raw count, one's a percentage of normal. One showing you the curved axis, basically, which is what the colored lines are supposed to be giving you. And here we take that curved axis and straighten it out and show you the changes in the marketplace. Here's the sellers that are taking the largest 10% price reductions. So sellers that are taking the 10% of the sellers that are taking the biggest price reductions right now are taking about a 14% price reduction, right around 86%. The most you'd expect is 16%. Typically, you'd expect is around 12%. So again, actually a fairly tight metric. And in a hot marketplace, those sellers that are taking the biggest price reductions are taking a 10% price reduction. So you have to keep everything in balance, and that's why I put on the blue and the gray and the red, the gray and the blue lines. Here's compared to normal. And again, I just want to, since it's new for this week, I'm pointing out right here at January 1st of 2023, I changed from the condensed x-axis to the expanded x-axis so you can see better what's happening in the current years. And what you're saying here is the seller price reductions are a little bit less than they typically are. Here is the ask price reduction frequency. So how common are ask prices? And the reduction of prices are right where you'd expect them to be. You can see the purple line and the gray lines right here, purple lines right here. So you're basically having a very typical year as far as the frequency of price reductions. The sellers are just doing larger price reductions than they typically do. Here you can see it's only about 105% would be my guess of normal. So just a little bit more, but basically right out the normal level of frequency. Here's the average overbid. So this is flipping over and looking at what buyers are doing. They're coming in, and here you can see the numbers did show up, but I probably will be deleting these because my focus, and I would assume I'm not that different, is on what these absolute numbers are. And I think it's far more important to pay attention to the relationship between the purple, the actual data, and say the gray line than actually what the raw counts are. But again, the expanded data for the last 2 years. Here again is the thing on straightening out the axis. And so you can see the magnitude of overbidding is essentially right where you'd expect it to be at 100%. Here's the frequency of overbidding. Frequency of overbidding right on the gray line, following the trend. Yeah, we had a little surge up here with more overbidding than common, but it was, fairly short-lived. And now you're right back to normal. All of the trends are down, and the trends continue down a little bit on the closings into the next year, and that's because of the lag time for escrows. These escrows right here at the bottom are the escrows that are really happening right about now. Here's the same information stretched out onto a horizontal grid. So you can see that you have slightly more overbidding than typical, but essentially overbid is normal. You can see the period of time when it was above. You can see the improvement of overbidding in 2023. We started off the year really low. You came up to where you'd expect the market to sort of be. And these are just rough estimates of put in here by me. I will adjust them a little bit more to try to reflect where we change over from a balanced marketplace to a seller's, but they were just initial guesses. And then you go up and you get up here to sort of the hot market with overbidding, and now you're coming back down to the cool marketplace with a typical marketplace. Here is your sold price. This is on log scale paper. The sloped straight line is sort of long-term appreciation trends. You can see there's periods of time when we've had price above where you'd expect it to be, and at the end of the year, it dips down. So here's our dip down. So next year, we're going to start off and most likely see some significant price increase. Here, I'm now looking at the 3 counties, San Mateo County in the orange, Santa Clara County in the blue, and Alameda County in the gray. And this is simply the active inventory. So you can see inventory has come down. If you go back, you can see San Mateo County is roughly where it is every year. You can go back and look at Santa Clara County, and the blue is actually on the low side, not as low as we were in 2022 when we were under 200 listings available. We're now almost at 300, and Alameda County is basically at a record low. It isn't a record low, though, because you did have 2 years here in both 2022 and 2021, when in 2021, it was about the same level. In 2022, it was slightly lower for Alameda County. Here's the number of offers accepted, and you can see the trend is down every year, but these are basically very close to the lowest years. Again, 2023 was probably the lowest year that we had. So 2022 for inventory, 2023 for offers, and San Mateo County is right at their bottom as well. Here's looking at days on sold inventory. Wow, that's a lot of decimal places there. This data actually does not look like it got updated. I didn't catch that. You can see you're just to the left of the vertical line, which would be basically this data. That did not get updated, so I'll skip over that. Here's the 75th percentile time on the marketplace. Again, Santa Clara County in the blue is at 33 days. And you can see how right now I'm focused again on numbers, and I think the trend is more important. And you can see they're all up in all three counties, but you can see that San Mateo County is by far the slowest. Alameda County is in the middle, and Santa Clara County is the slowest. Here's the magnitude of price reductions, and it's actually just the ratio. So the price reduction is actually 2% for San Mateo County, 1.7% reduction for Alameda County, and 0.9% reduction for Santa Clara County. And again, I'm focused on the individual numbers instead of the trend. Here's your frequency of price reductions. So you can see Santa Clara County has the least, Alameda County has the middle, and San Mateo County has the most price reductions. Amount of overbidding, you can see you're above 100% down here. Last year in 2023, when we were sort of at the bottom of the market, we were actually under 100%, and now you're clearly above. This is the frequency of overbidding for the three counties. San Mateo County, again, has the least amount of overbidding. Santa Clara County, the second, and Alameda County has the third. So it's sort of interesting that Alameda County has a lot more overbidding as far as frequency, but the magnitude wasn't that great. And I think what is going on is a lot of people move into Alameda County for affordability, and therefore they're willing to overbid, but not a large dollar amount. And here's the appreciation since 2015, the last 9 months. You can see San Mateo County has done the least well. Alameda County is second, and Santa Clara County is the best. And you can see that the appreciation was definitely higher at the peak of the market back in 2022. Here is your price on log scale paper. The horizontal lines are just to give you a reference, and San Mateo County remains below Santa Clara County. That does not happen very often. You can see that San Mateo County is typically more expensive. Has not been the case for the last 3 weeks, I think. Here's the same information on regular paper for those that prefer. Here's the estimated payments, and Santa Clara County is going to be higher because the price is higher and the formula is the same. Here's the actual raw numbers. You can pick Santa Clara County or any county you want, or look at Silicon Valley as the whole. You can see the number of new listings was fairly stable from last week. With that, we're going to be leaving Silicon Valley only and going into the Greater Bay Area. The Greater Bay Area now includes 5 regions and 13 counties. Here's the data. So you can come back and look at whatever data interests you the most. Here is the inventory. You can see inventory in all 5 regions is down and goes down fairly significantly. This is the number of offers accepted. And again, fairly low, but again, you got to keep in mind that it's typically low at this time of the year. You can see that Silicon Valley has dropped below Central Valley and North Bay. So typically here it's been running above, and it's been above all this year. And Silicon Valley region has had the biggest drop in the number of offers compared to the other areas. Here's your days on unsold inventory. Silicon Valley is still doing the best with days on unsold inventory. Here's your time on the market. Silicon Valley again is still the fastest. You can see that the Central Valley is second fastest, and then the other 3 are pretty close together, with the San Francisco Marin being on the top or the slowest marketplace. Here's price reductions. Cities is the fastest. Silicon Valley is the least. You can look at any region that interests you. And the major reason for doing this is just seeing how Silicon Valley is doing compared to the other regions on a global basis. Silicon Valley has the least frequent seller price reductions. The cities has the most at almost double. This is the magnitude of overbidding. Silicon Valley has the most overbidding, and the Central Coast has the least overbidding. Frequency, same order. Silicon Valley the most, Central Coast the least. This is the total appreciation. You can see that the cities has done very poorly, and you can see the Central Valley has done the most appreciation since 2015. This is the sold price on the different regions. This is the monthly payments using that 80% loan for the different regions. And you can see that San Francisco is a little bit more expensive than the Silicon Valley. With that, we're at the end. We've been talking about week number 52 here in Silicon Valley. The URLs, remember, changed to 2024 next week. But to get to a handout, which is posted, you put in the green root URL, then add in H for handout 2023-12-30, and you get today's handout, and it is posted. To look at the archive on YouTube, it's just the green URL or the YouTube handle. I'm Richard Calhoun, Creekside Realty, broker here for 40 years, and open for questions. Anyone have any questions? And for those that are viewing this, I appreciate any feedback. I think I'm going to drop off the numbers, and I think I'm going to keep the compressed, expanded access. Very unconventional, but anyone that wants to provide feedback on that, I greatly appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Not seeing any muted mics. Having a great week. See you next year. Bye for now.